let me tell you. When I heard you were you're ready to discuss with me about the movie, I was very surprised and very happy, to tell you the truth, because I admire you since several years. We know each other very well. We meet several times, and I think you are my friend in certain way. But I would say also essentially we are Europeans. We are, of course, the American cinema is very important to us from the beginning. And some of the directors, like Stone, they are important because he touches some extraordinary subjects. And he went down with really a kind of thinking and showing things we should know and and think about them. And thank you very much.
Costa, can I call you Costa? Costa, meeting you was a highlight in my life. But I want to tell you, the first time I saw you, you probably have no memory of it. It was in 1969. You came to New York with Yves Montand and Jacques Perrin, I believe. Three of you walked in to our NYU. We screened your film, Z. And it was like a theater about this size. On 8th Street in New York. You remember? Oh, of course. Well, you must have had many screenings at that time. You were just being discovered. You were the hottest director in the world. You were on fire. Everybody wanted to be a director. Everybody in that school. And you were a god, one of the gods. And I have to say, it was one of the highlights of my life to see that movie. I'll never forget it. We were all shocked because it was a new kind of movie. It was, there had been good movies about governments that lie, we know that. A lot of them, a lot of movies. But this had a new fire to it, a new pace, a new, the music by Theodorakis drove the film amazingly, but it was a wake up to a new kind of generation. And that, you felt it right away. And French Connection got made 2 years later, I think it was, and Friedkin, Billy Friedkin, said that he was very inspired by your movie. And French Connection changed American cinema in its own way, the same kind of pace, the same kind of fire. It was a beautiful movie, but you also said, you were very eloquent, and you were talking at that time about the insidiousness of fascism. Fascism was in the government, in our lives, in the way the government treated us, and not just the Greek situation, but it was because in 1969 the world was on fire as well. We had our Vietnam, and France had Algeria. Germany, we just come out of Germany, you're an expert on that. And you were very, very eloquent. And yet at the same time, you weren't Godard, you weren't saying, go out there and change everything, but you were an inspiration to us. And then 50 years later, here we are, and here is your 21st movie. You've made 20 movies, and the 21st movie is just as strong as your first movie because it comes from the heart, and it comes from a terrific honesty. No matter what movie you made in those 50 years, it was honest. Not one of them is false. Not one of them. And today's movie, it's the second time I've seen it. I think if you have to be moved by the honesty and the reality of it, of the approach of death, and at the same time, what's interesting, one of the questions that I have is at the very end of this movie, your protagonist, excellently, both actors are unbelievably good. All the actors are good in this. Your protagonist gets the news that he expects, that he too has a time limit and he is going to die. And he's as scared as despite all the knowledge that he's accumulated, He's as scared as a person who doesn't know. Is this your last movie?
No, it's my new movie.
I think, you know, I think of the movie, do you think you're gonna make another one? Honestly?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. I think as much as nature gives me the possibilities to think and to work, I will keep trying to make movies.
You seem
start
incredibly,
thinking to someone and write a little bit. And but it's also, you know, with the age, it's a different view on everything. Also, we take distance, some distance, and I like that distance because we have the passion. The important thing is to keep having the passion and to deal with the distance and the passion. It's not always very easy. But I know you are preparing one, and I'm happy to know that because, as I started saying before, I was really moved when I learned that you would like to have that chat with me, because your movies play part in my discovering the world in a different way, and discover also another kind of American cinema, not just the cowboys.
well, don't forget, there was Paths of Glory too.
No, I'm exaggerating. It's not only cowboys, a lot of great American movies. But you are special in that, so I'll stop saying more about you because it's going to be kind of compliments between them.
I've done 20 feature films, so I really want to make 21, which is I'm a little younger than you, but I'm catching up. So, you know, if I make 21, I'd be very happy. And I have a feeling I will.
You should have a lot of time in front of you. I know your age.
This movie was written by you, the screenplay, and it came from the book by Regis Debray, who was a philosopher, and also Claude Grange,
That's right.
who was a palliative care specialist. So your actor is scared at the end, right? He's scared of it. Is that correct? Is that his interpretation?
No, what I liked, I see in the book there's 25 to 88 cases, completely different cases. There's no continuity, script continuity. It's not the case one after the other. So I have to create the characters, and the characters are one is registered, the two writers, by the way, of the book, and then have changed different things here and there to make it more clear for us, and to link it much more in the life. And the life is the life with the kids, for example. You see the kids, they're watching porno movies. And I learned that something like 73% in France, unless, I don't know, in the United States, young boys and girls have seen porno movies before being 13 years old. So we're living in a bizarre society, by the way. I don't know why the television have porno movies. If someone is willing to see porno movies, can buy, I don't know, a cassette or whatever, not to be open to everybody. It was very easy to find those things in television.
Well, it seems to me that since your film 50 years ago, that there's been so much violence now in films. It's every film that to be successful has to be more and more violent. And we do, American cinema especially does violence remarkably well, although it's artificial. But at the same time, all of these images tend to make us indifferent and callous about death. I've noticed that in war films, they get worse and bloodier and bloodier and bloodier, and more shocking. So at the end of the day, we get further away from the reality. What we need to see are more movies like this that bring us closer to the reality. What will we do at that moment? That's what this movie is about. You've been very honest about it. So now tell us, what do you think is going to happen? You really have an idea? Is there going to be some kind of after life situation? You've mentioned a few theories, but
What says the old lady? The movie. You remember the old lady thinks about after, what's going after.
yeah.
It's, I think, something like, I was born in a very Christian family, and those paradise is the most important thing. All the life was around in paradise, to get yourself to go to paradise, not so much to live every day, but to get yourself to go to paradise. Then I started living. I said, okay, I have to go, before to go to paradise, I have to go to the university. Then I started saying that probably after university here in the United States and the cinema school in the United States, I said, then probably I have to continue to make movies. And then I would think about the paradise and so forth. So I'm getting in the moment now of my age where I try to think about paradise, but I'm not sure about that for nothing. So I said, we'll see.
Okay. No one can answer that question, I suppose. Although we have after-death experiences, people have come back and there are many remarkable similarities in these after-death experiences, where people talk about a light, some kind of light, and some kind of passage through tunnels, caves, corridors, into some kind of light. I don't know if that is because we read a lot, or it certainly is. It's a trope, and I think anyway. I've taken a lot of psychedelic trips. I don't know if you have. And I keep taking them because I think it's interesting. I think it's very interesting to hook yourself up at the point of death to LSD, ketamine, psilocybin. It's an interesting experiment because it takes you as close as possible to the edge. Those of you who want to try that, I highly recommend it. You won't get a final answer, but you're going to get some questions, some good questions, and a good feeling for it. I want to talk about fascism, because this has been a theme through all these films. If you look at them, except for this one, there's no mention of it. Fascism in the Greek government is disgusting. It's scary. And you did it so beautifully because you were at the edge of reality. You did fiction, but it was all happened in some way. Tell us about Stavros, if you can, just for a moment. The parliamentarian who was killed.
Yeah, Stavros was a major person, not politician, doctor. And in the most difficult moment in Greece, he came up. And he was proposing interesting things. Less military bases, for example, in Greece. Greece at that time had 3 or 4 military bases. NATO ones. So it would be a war. The first bombs we fell on Greece, of course. And also because very close from Russia, from Soviet Union. So he started saying, stop, let's stop at it. And my feeling is to not go further on with that. I think we come to the world, which is an extraordinary gift. I don't know for whom, for someone. So where babies grow up, we have kind of great life to see what's going around, to see the earth, to live, to have love stories, or love story, as possible. And then we get in a moment. It's a holiday life, and then a moment we have to leave. At the meantime, what we do, We hate each other, sometimes we have wars, we kill, we did the worst things in the world. So getting the age, I say, no, we should stop all those killings, to have a good life all the way down, each one in the level he lives, and try to have a good life, and try to, sometimes to help the others also, to have a good life, instead to do all those negative things, sometimes not just to be richer, but to have a bigger country and so on. That's the awful thing we live. It's a shame when we live. So it's very clear to me as getting very old, of course. And I try to show it and to say it as much as I can. And my next movie, if I get to there, I will try to say something about that.
Well,
About 70 years or old, or 80 or 100, I don't know how much. I have a friend, philosopher. He's up to 104 next month. Wow. He's great. He writes books and he speaks very well about life.
Do you see fascism still all over the world? What has changed since Z?
No, the world has changed drastically, and especially with all these the digital things we have. The movies have changed drastically. We used to have movies made in France, in the United States, in Britain, and some other places around the world, not so many either. But today, I was counting the other day in television set, Netflix proposes 800 movies. What will you do with 800 movies? So you go from one to another, and at the end say, no, I take a book or the paper. So that's the problem. That's the problem we have the cinema today. Because cinema has to be seen, in my feeling, it's here, all together. We know each other, we go on, we see stories.
I want to trace your concepts of fascism. In Missing, for example, it's very clear, the Chilean revolution. And those of you who've seen it, Jack Lemmon and the husband of Sissy Spacek are taken, he disappears and is killed, an American in Chile. You did a beautiful job. The Americans didn't go to see it though. It was not successful here, it was successful. You got the prize at Cannes, the Palme d'Or at Cannes. So, but it didn't register in this country. It's upsetting.
But Missing was produced by the American big company, traditional company, Universal.
Yeah.
And when I proposed with the book, I said, okay, I would like to make a movie about the last 70 pages. The father who goes to find his son,
Yeah.
in the middle of the Pinochet case. And I said, okay, let's make it. I said, no, before I will do an outline, and if you accept it, we do it. And I made an outline, and we did it. And I said, I would like to give me all the freedom to do my movies the way I like to do it. They let me totally freedom to do the movie, for the casting, for the editing, for the writing, for everything. And so I discovered extraordinary America. Sometimes some people say to me, no, it's not like this all the time. I think it must be like this for not the great movies, for the good movies. And you must have the experience also about that.
Yeah. Music Box, 1989, also a very powerful movie. It's about a young, Jessica Lange plays the daughter of a German war criminal who's living in Ohio or something. It's based on the Dukmasian story. Right. Many war criminals came to America, helped by the CIA and so forth. There were rat lines and so forth and many people argue that there was a very strong fascist impulse in the United States. And in this movie, you see a very nice old man who turns out to be, who's the father of Jessica Lange. And if you see the film, it's very subtle, beautifully done, as she realizes that her father is a war criminal. It's quite something. And again, I found it to be very moving, but I was surprised that it wasn't appreciated in this country the way it should have been.
Yes, what I like to do in that movie is that, you know, have learned with the American bad guys, they have a bad face. The kids are bad. The dog is very bad. The dog is bad. Everything's bad. So when you go back to the Germany in the 30s, millions of Germans, they were anti-Semitic. Some people, they good people, family people. Instead they were. They did what everybody knows. So I would say this is an interesting story. The other thing in that story is that most of the Nazis left Germany because they are known, and a lot of them came to the United States and were used because they say we are anti-communist, so we have to come here because there. And I discovered that they were accepted. There was a cardinal in New York, Cardinal Spellman, who used to have huge oblates around of him, saying, well, they will come here to be saved from the communism. And this guy in the music box, it was one of them. There was a big trial in Israel, probably some of them you know about that. So this is other side of the reality, of the truthfulness, the stories they are telling us, officially, I mean. So sometimes the cinema can go into the real, not completely the real. Who knows completely the real? It's not always very clear, but as close as possible to be to the real things. And we can do it in cinema. You know that. You have done it.
It was a very courageous film, and I was again surprised that it was ignored in this country. I've seen it abroad, and it's a beautiful film. I want to, and you've also been very tough on the communist side, because I know you had a background. Your father was in the Communist Party.
No, my father was anti-royalist. My father, so he did the resistance during the occupation in France with all the left-wing people. Among them, they were anti-royalists, communists, and everything. And the other side was the right-wing people. They were like the king back. My father used to hate the king because very personal things, because the guys pushed the Greeks to do a war against Turkish, but it's another story. So the kids of the people who have been communists, considered as being communists, they could not study in Greece at that time. It was impossible. The only way to study was to go outside. And the only place you could study without being paid, because the universities was France. The universities are free in France. You go in, you study for 3 years. So that was, so my father used to consider as communist, and I have to go away to be able to like in freedom always.
Well, at the end of confession, I have one question I've always had. I guess I've kept it to myself for 50 years. Why is Yves Montand allowed to live and not hung like everybody else was?
Montand was saved for tourism because of his wife. The Confession is a movie about the communist trials. There was one of the most important one. It was this one where one of the survivors wrote a book. He was saved because he was married with a girl, French girl, absolutely. Her brother was one of the major leaders of the Communist Party. So I think the Communist Party in French Communist Party called it the communists in Germany, in Russia, and said, let him go away. I think that's the only reason. Yes, because there were survived two of them. To say two words about those trials, they were essentially trials against leaders who have to avoid everything, things they have that do nothing. But it was a way to see that these leaders, they were traitors. They were Jews, essentially, most of them. Out of 15, there were 15, how many? There are 13 Jews. And they say they are Jews, and they are traitors, of course, because they have to deal with the Americans, with the Eastern world. And they were executed, they have to avoid, they have a system to make people to avoid they never have done. A very complex system, it's what the movie says. It's not torturing, beating them, no, it's another way. It's a very special way, starting in school, started in the early 30s. So, the book was so extraordinary because at that time there have been a lot of anti-communist movies. Even Hitchcock has done one, if you remember that. Hitchcock. Hitchcock, yes.
Which one?
One of the last one. Hitchcock, your director. But they're all really fake because they are based on feelings about, but not about real situations, like the one I had in the book, that book made by Arthur London, who was from Czechoslovakia, Jew from Czechoslovakia. And so I made the movie.
Yeah, but I still don't understand why he lives. I mean, because of Simone Signoret is his wife, but still I don't understand because everybody else cracked, and he cracked too. He went along with it. He confessed.
Yes.
Why wasn't he
confessed too? He confessed too. But they have to show also to the people. There are some people who are a bit better than the others. If you execute everybody, it's a very bad image. But the thing also essentially is because the French Communist Party interfered strongly not to kill him.
I'll let you go on that one. One big
Complex,
question. One big question. This is right in your alley because it's your personal story. I want to know why you have never made a movie about Churchill's war in Greece. Why? It's your kind of subject matter, and it's a great story, and it would have shocked the world.
It's a great story.
It's a great story.
It's a great story.
You should tell it.
You should tell it. Your English is much better than mine.
I wasn't there. I don't understand. The Greeks were some of the fiercest fighters against the Nazis, and they tremendous. And then the English moved into Greece in '44, and Churchill bombed the shit out of Athens to get these people. Tell us about it. Your father. Wow.
I don't know how to say that. No, the problem was to survive in a country with an extreme right-wing government. They don't care about anything but the ideology. So, but today we said we speak about cinema, not so much about politics. No, my generation went through very, very difficult, situations, and especially coming from a small country. And going to France, I discovered another kind of society, with truthfulness, with education, with people saying what they would like to say and to do. It was really a big shock for me. And so I said, okay, I do movies, I will try to say what I'm thinking there. And to do movies only because I feel very deeply about subject, really. Because with a movie you live 2 years, 3 years sometimes. There has to be really a love story. If it's not a love story, it becomes a job. And cinema is not a job, it's a passion. So try every time to keep the passion. Sometimes I drop stories because after a while, after 6 months, a year, do you have any love about the car and so forth. So I drop them. And that's a little my way of doing, understanding the cinema and going to see the other movies.
He should make one. Tell him this, he should make it as his 22nd movie. One more question, and it's a movie question, okay? I love Yves Montand. You did several movies with him. Tell me, how was he? Which one? All of them?
No, he it was extraordinary. Every time it was a kind of discovery every time, to discover the actors first, after looking for the actors. And I have been assistant for a few years, assistant to director. The French assistants are different from the American assistant. The American assistant organize the job. The French assistants are close to the director. They have to know everything about, and the director says we have to do this and that. So it's a completely different position. And I was very lucky to work with some of the major French assistants, directors. So I learned a lot of things. And also the French society was for me a discovery, as I said before, because I saw the first extraordinary thing I had when I was in university, at the house for the students. In the main room, there was a table with all the newspapers, the right wing, the left, the communist. In Greece, you cannot think of that. I mean, it was impossible. You go to jail if there's a communist or a left wing newspaper. So that was the big lesson I learned in France. And of course, later I saw the rest of the world, and I discovered also some other countries, the same thing was the same. Here, for example, the United States. Even if we are very aggressive with the communists, and all the communists were not all of them bad guys. They were like the Soviets, like Stalin. They're good guys who would like to have a different society, but in a different way also, very complicated way, sometimes very aggressive way. That was the problem they had. What I can say more?
Well, were you friendly with him? Did you keep a friendship with Yves Montand? Did you keep the friendship? Yves Montand.
Yves Montand was amazing because my first movie was Sleeping Car Murder. It's a kind of
beautiful movie.
When I was assistant of René Clair, and then René Clément asked me to be his assistant in 2-3 months. So I was reading books. I read that book, and I said, okay, I will do the script as an exercise. And I did the script. I gave it to the secretary of the studio to tape it because I have handwriting. And she gave it to the director of the studio when she typed it. The director of the studio called me, said, you have a good script there. Let's make the movie. I said, you don't have the rights. I even not know the writer. He said, are you crazy? You don't do that. So, and they say, okay, we can do it, but tell me what could be the casting. Started from the low, small parts. I said, Jacques Perrin, for example, was a young man. And the other thing, someone said, Simone Signore's daughter, whom I know very well, because she would like to be a actress. I said, okay, I'm called Simone. I said, no, don't call Simone. I know Simone very well because I was assistant in the movie with Simone Signore. And so anyway, he called Simone, and Simone said to me, okay, I read your script. If you like, I can be part of the great, the old actress, the role of an old artist. She was not that old either. And I was very surprised because since Simone said that, the movie was made. And then Montand told me a day, you wrote a good script. Is there something for me? I said, Yves, read the script and take the role you like to do. So there was just one role, which was a policeman. So that policemen in France at that period were very aggressive, were very bad considered because of the war in Algeria. They were very aggressive. So he didn't like very much to do a policeman. And after a while I said to him, well, look, do it with a southern accent, the son of Marseille. And he changed completely his mind. And he became another person. He was not anymore the singer, he was a guy from the south. He did it, he accepted credit, and he was great. And it was a good success. And curiously, the movie came to New York, has extraordinary critics, considered among the 10 best movies in the year. It was so surprising for everybody. So that became friends. The movie did very well, and you know, when you work with actors, And if the movie does very well, so you have a good friend.
What was the last thing he said to you?
What?
What was the last thing Yves Montand said to you? The last conversation. The last breath. What was it?
It was okay.
Okay, I'm not going to get much out of this. Listen, you guys open up the questions here. Take a few more. Okay? Ask the man. He's here. Those of you who have lingering questions.
You said so much with such a quiet, a perfect pace, and you brought us very close to the humanness of it, that was so powerful. Were you very conscious throughout the movie how to keep it just the pace from low to exhibit the power of it?
You have to translate this. Can you help us, Ray?
The pace of the movie was very steady, but it was also so powerful. Were you conscious of that? To keep it just kind of us to bring very closely to the movie, and that intimacy. It was a tough subject, but
Is there a question? What's the question?
the question is, was it conscious of the pace? How's the pace
On this one.
Always a pace.
On Last Breath, yeah. He's asking about the pace of Last Breath. You're asking how did he keep you interested? Because it's a tough subject. That's what he's asking.
Yes, it's a tough talk, as I was trying to say at the beginning here, was because of my age. I was looking to find a story, to make a movie about how we die, because all of us we die. As I said before, the approach for me, the horizon of dying is coming closer every year. So I found that story because of Régis Debray, who is a good friend, one of the writers, sent to me. I read it. I said, okay, there's something to make about that, to make a movie. And I make the movie essentially because of that, because all of us were terrorized all our lives about death. It's a nightmare. We don't want to speak about it. We don't want to hear about that. So it's there, but it's going to be there anyway. So it's important to me to try to do to say something about that. So I made that movie the way you saw it. And because it's probably have to be prepared in a certain way. Because also there's that moment in France, a big fight about how we end when for very sick people. Because I believe also have to help them to end the life. And I believe also that we should be able, when the day we decided to die, because we don't have any reason to live anymore, happens to some people, to be a place in a society we can go where they help you to die, not to wait. And this is a big fight at the moment in France, because some places like Swiss, like some other countries in France, even in the United States, you have in Auckland, I think, you can go to a place and some people help you to die if you want to. And I think it's important. It's necessary in society to be able, in a moment, to decide, because, you know, if you get into the age, you have so many things, you don't have them anymore. Things don't work very well. The ears, the eyes, the knees, I can say more. So, you don't want to read anymore, not to speak with people, or to not to listen music, because the ears don't work very well. We have an example in the cinema, Jean-Luc Godard, probably you know the name, and probably the movies, great director, major director. He decided, he's Swiss, he decided today, so he went to that institution in Switzerland, and they did what
You're talking about assisted suicide.
He said goodbye all his friends, he met his friends, and then they helped him. In 5 minutes, he was out. Have to be something like this in society. I know everybody not agrees with that. I can understand it, but I'm deeply sure has to be done a day. You will come a day.
That raises the major question. Some people tell you you should be conscious of your death, not morphine or anything, or drugged out or anything. You should just see it And yet one of your characters in the movie, the older lady who's terrific, who's the smartest one. She studied all the other religions and this. She wants to be conscious. Angelina Molina, the gypsy, wants to be asleep. And is going to take, and now you have the two serums.
It's the
different approach
we have today in France, which when they're in a point to very, very sick, this close to die, so they put in an injection and they sleep up until the death, which is, I think, hypocritical in a way.
Which is what?
Hypocritical.
Hypocritical, I see.
Because why not just a shot finish immediately? Because with sleeping, you can sleep 2 hours, 2 days, or 1 month before to die.
Yeah, well, how do you want to go?
Yes.
You don't want, if you're in pain, do you want to just go to sleep?
I think in our society you have still the idea of what's a life is a paradise of that. It's a good thing for people who believe to that. But also you have to have a place when we are very old and not necessarily to society and not necessarily to ourselves to go and say, oh, help me to die. And they should give us that gift.
Actually, if I may, I'd like to follow on, Oliver, with your question just a bit. Did your opinion of how you felt your own death should be remain resolute from beginning to the end of filming? Or your protagonist, for example, is asked that he be decisive about his death halfway through the film. Did you have an opinion about your own death before you started filming, and did it change by the time you finished?
Well, I think you're asking if, while you were making the film, did you change any of your thinking about how to die? Or was it set by the book? The book had a certain, did you change anything in your thinking as you were making
Yes, I
the
have
movie?
changed the book. I kept some cases, and the rest of it, I put my ideas in the book. I introduced my ideas. I said, well, I was thinking about the end, all that part, also particularly at the end of the movie, it's not on the book either. So, it was to me important, I have said also, to think about the situation, to deal with I dealt with the story, writing the story and making the movie 1 year and a half. So it's a kind of lesson to me to make the story, first of all.
Well, how would you compare Angelina Molina's death with the older lady, the professor who taught school, who was a professor? What was the difference? How do you see it? Who had the better death?
With the paradigm.
Angelina or the woman, Angelina Molina in the trailer, the gypsy, or the older woman earlier?
All of them. There are different cases, completely different cases.
All right, one more question, Michael, over there. No, I'm sorry, it was the gentleman behind you.
No, but my idea about that, sorry, just a moment, I wanted to add something what we said. Is I believe you have to be prepared. Not prepared in an anguish way, but as much as possible in a quiet way. After have a certain age, of course. I don't say that to people who are 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, 80 years old. They're good shape.
Thank you so much for an amazing film, and thank you both for an amazing conversation. I had a question about the visual approach that you brought to the film. It was beautifully shot, by the way. Thank you so much. Again, for a film that speaks about death and how one is going to pass from this life, it felt like the camera was very alive. You know, there was I noticed a lot of movement, a lot of lyricism in the way you move the camera. I'm curious about your approach with that, if that was kind of a conscious choice to give so much life and movement to the camera, and also some of your visual influences as well. In recent years, you know, what were some of your visual inspirations as you went to make this film?
No, I tried this time to tell you, trying to use the camera in a completely different way, and to do also what generally I don't do so much, long shots, and to go with the camera slowly to the persons, to the characters, to everything, to everybody, which is, if you see one of my other movies are completely different. So because of this subject, and because also the way you have to approach it completely, is to take the time.
Well, at this point, I'd like to thank both of our.
Thank you.